The conference in South Africa is basically on advancing reparation strategies for the African continent. Now, we have a bunch of lawyers. We have the African jurists, the African Judges and Jurists Forum. It is the one that is hosting this conference here in Joburg. We have a lot of lawyers in this place. We have our very own Patrick Kauta from Namibia. Of course, based on the litigation, the ongoing litigation for the Landless People's Movement in Aras. We have retired magistrates. We have members of different communities that are litigating the same cause all over the continent. And we are basically working out on what strategies should Africa have or approach in regards to the reparations question.
Can you tell us why is reparatory justice such a critical issue for Africa right now?
After a few years of attempts, the African Union finally adopted the theme of the year, reparations for people of African descent and Africans for the crimes of apartheid, colonialism, and genocide. And so this thing, therefore, triggered a lot of organizations, especially NGOs and all the legal organizations in the continent, to basically start on the questions. Because it is not just something that is there going to stand as a thing, but it has to be put into practice as to what will the approach be, what needs to be done, what are the resources required, what can we start with, what is available right now, and therefore what is available at our disposal. Now, different organizations have started looking into it. There are organizations like the Landless People's Movement, amongst others, that have already started with this issue even before the African Union declared this is the theme of the year. And so we are basically just trying to ignite the reparations cause in communities that wanted to give up on the cause, but also advocating and mobilizing for all the other communities that actually have a very, very strong case that should actually be put out there. We need to let the world know what plunder was brought to the African continent and how this plunder, through colonialism, through genocide, through apartheid and all other crimes against humanity, must be repaired, basically by the West amongst many other colonizers and even the neo-colonizers on the continent. And so it's a very, very critical cause. Many people have lost many, many things. So much was taken from the continent and it has to be repaired. Part of the critical issues on the continent that we are also looking at strongly is the restitution of artifacts that were taken from the continent during colonialism that must be returned and be returned ASAP. And so many things, for instance, we have speakers from different museums in Africa that are working tirelessly to repatriate the human remains and the cultural artifacts that were taken from the continent. And there were a few success stories that we learned from. Like this story, we can bring it back home to Namibia, where we have the human remains of the Nama and Herero peoples that were taken from Shark Island through a very, very brutal process where the relatives of these people were the ones that had the skin of the skulls of these people before the skulls were transported to Germany for pseudo-eugenics processes. And so it will be therefore very important. It will bring some sort of closure. It will release a lot of emotions. If these people have to actually know that the heads of their loved ones, of which their grandparents had to go through trauma to ensure that they are transported to Germany, are returned and they can bury these things decently according to their cultural traditions and norms And so the movement is big, it is greater than us. We just have to work and ensure that reparations within the African context is realized.
Now, what are some of the key strategies being proposed at the conference for achieving reparatory justice?
Of course, you see, the African Americans, African people are the only people that have not been paid reparations in the entire globe. And I'm talking about reparations. I'm not talking about small handouts here and there. I'm talking about actual reparations. Everyone in the world has been paid reparations. Home crimes against humanity have been perpetrated by Africans or people of African descent. And therefore, the strategies that are being proposed here, the very, very first and fundamental one is advocacy. The world needs to understand why Africans also deserve reparations, and this then comes down to the argument of humanity. The world dehumanizes Africans or people of African descent. So you have to get the African, him or herself, to understand that you are being dehumanized. And this is what you deserve. Your country is not supposed to be splurged with wars and instability. Your humanity and your dignity has been stripped away from you by the world, and that needs to come back. And this is what you deserve. This is what you reparations are not. It's not you begging the West to give you some money here and there. Reparations is owed. Africans and people of African deserve because of what they have, and because everybody else in the world where reparations are owed has been paid because it's owed to you. And that is why in Namibia we are rejecting the joint declaration of that the Namibian government signed with the German government, because we do not want aid, we want reparations. We know what we speak of because we know what we deserve. We deserve reparations. The Namibian government can get aid from the German government anytime they want. But ours is reparations, and reparations to the affected communities, the genocided communities, which is the Herero and Nama peoples of Namibia. And so advocacy is very, very fundamental, because the victim needs to learn of who they are, what their status is, and what the victim needs to do. We know very well that not everybody, not all Africans are part of this process. Why? Because they don't see the importance of it. Why? Because they don't understand what it is and how it can impact their lives and why it is important to them to be a part of it. And so that was part of the fundamental strategies that were proposed. The other strategies that were proposed were that, such as litigation, of course, is one of the ways, but litigation is quite costly. And these processes are usually driven by community members that are vanquished people. These communities are the unwashed and the unperfumed of society. You are talking about the lower class, marginalized communities as a consequence of this crime. And then the third thing was to tackle and try and overturn the political will of the ruling regimes in the African states. Part of why reparations is not realized today on the continent is because of the lack of political will to pursue their former colonizers on the question of reparations. Many of the African states still benefit immensely through aid and other strategies. We know that we have politicians that are allegedly mostly corrupt, and therefore they cannot turn on the very hand that feeds them. And so a lot of work, again, that comes down to advocacy and what needs to be done. And so these are part of the three major strategies that were proposed. But of course, the conference is still going to go on tomorrow, and I will be happy to come back with a broader update tomorrow.